Letherman Tool Group. So before we get started, just a quick introduction. So you already met a little bit about me. I'm Jordan. I'm the ERP Business Analyst for Leatherman. I've been in this role for about a year now, and I've been at Leatherman for a little less than 3 years. So what does Leatherman do? So you guys are probably aware of, we make multi-tools in our Portland, Oregon facility. You know, you can access the tools and pliers. Very cool. This is also an example of a multi-tool that we make. It's actually a watch band, but each of the tools are on the different links. So the goal is to really have the tool with you when you need it, wherever that is. And it's going to help you prepare you for anything you expect or anything unexpected. So the neat thing is all the decisions we're making at our business level are driving down to be able to get product to the consumer and be able to drive and fuel all these stories of all the different tales of how Leatherman saved the day. And that's pretty exciting. And at the end of the day, that's what drives me to make sure we can really improve our business internally so we can pass that on to the consumers. So let's start kind of with a brief overview of our BI selection process, and then we'll get into a little bit more detail of how we're using BI and how it's really helped improve profitability at Leatherman. So, quick overview of the process first. Leatherman was really coming from a very archaic style for reporting and analysis prior to starting this BI project. So, from our perspective, when we wanted to implement a BI tool, we were mainly looking for these main points here. The first one, single source of the truth. That's really important, meaning everyone in the company is looking at the same type of reporting, the same data, and we can all make decisions on that same single location. So that way, you don't have the confusion or the arguments going on in meetings when someone gets a report from one power user, another person gets a report from their favorite power user, and they're supposed to be the same information, but they're different, and you get off topic. And no, we want to get everyone on the same page. Let's not worry about the data. We'll have trust in it. Next thing is we really want to be able to provide access to the end user and streamline the process for getting this information. So we want that end user to be able to log in anywhere and on any device and get the information. And we also want them to be able to get the information that's specific to them, as opposed to having to use a canned or standardized report that they then have to rely on someone else to customize or update for them. And then lastly, we have a lot of information from a lot of different areas, not just AX, and we really want to combine that all into one single reporting system. So that way for the end user, it's really simple. All I want is BI. I don't need to go to 3 different sources to get the information. So first step, we are very much a Microsoft shop. We try to use all the Microsoft software we get to its fullest capacity. So the first question in our BI selection process was, well, we get Power BI, why not use it? And when we were evaluating so we started the evaluation kind of around early 2014 time for selection for BI. And at that time when we were looking at Power BI, we weren't too pleased with its ability to kind of reduce the IT overhead in sort of the managing and the setup of the system, and then also kind of the functionality with the drill through and some of the other ways you would set up the different views and KPIs and such. It wasn't as user friendly as what we were looking for. So from that point, we said, okay, we need to look at a robust BI tool from a third-party vendor, and so let's set up a strong process that we can go through to really make sure we are doing the right thing for the company. And hopefully throughout it was a long process, but the end result really pays for itself. So first we start at the top level. We got an executive sponsor. That was mainly not just to say, hey, we get the buy-in on the Leatherman side and shake hands and be done, but that executive was with us throughout the whole project and still is with us now for whenever we need to make or drive any change in our company, or we need to reach out to Halo at the executive level. It really helps there. Next step is we got the selection committee together. You guys are all in IT. You're probably pretty familiar with this process. Selection committee, then you get the focus groups, and then we drafted our RFP, we got our requirements together on-site, then we did on-site scripted demos. With our finalist, it was Halo, Target, and Zap. And then from there, we did reference calls and then started negotiating, and final selection went with Halo. So all in all, about a 6-month process, but it really vetted out a lot of the strengths and weaknesses with the different solutions and really helped us feel confident going forward with Halo.
So let's go back here, and I know we're all on IT, and you guys are all know a good, strong process. I walk into these, mind you, you can spend $100,000, $150,000 on a BI project very quickly by the time you're done. I walk into these demonstrations after 9 years, and no one's taking notes. There are 15, 20 people in the room, no one's writing anything down. I'm thinking to myself, am I not saying anything of any value? Or more importantly, how are you going to compare vendors side by side? So we do really encourage you guys to use some type of scorecard system that essentially removes the emotional piece of the decision of like who you saw last, who you like the most, even though we do great hopefully in both those categories. We have a general scorecard that we can give you. It's got about 115 different type of requirements that we most often see. Maybe it's applicable for you, maybe it's not. You go in there and essentially make it your own. So if it's something that's of interest to you, make sure and let us know. Is there anyone that's currently looking at BI? Is that why everyone's here? Is anyone evaluating BI? Okay. So we're going to hold you hostage here.
I would also like to speak to the value of actually doing scripted demos. So that way you're getting the vendor to show what's important to you as opposed to what they want to see for the pretty bells and whistles.
And that's really scripted with your data, with the process.
And that was really where Halo stood out, was they did a proof of concept and demo, and they actually used our data, and that really had a big impact.
I think we built it on site the same day, almost. Yeah.
It was, yes.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah. Okay. We're gonna let's stick back to the presentation. Good on that. So what we liked about Halo, we had our requirements on our RFP and our version of our scorecard, and they exceeded in all the requirements. Again, is some of the benefits that Brandon alluded to earlier. They integrated and used the Microsoft services, so it wasn't really a independent third-party application. It was using a lot of the technology that we already had in place. And then the functionality for the end user was flexible, so we could have something as simple for an executive if I just want to get in and look and be done, or power user who wants to be able to get in and manipulate the data and play with it and everything in between. Strong connection with AX, and also the implementation team was very well versed with helping us on the AX side to pull in the AX data. Really big selling point for IT was the back-end tool, the Halo source that you saw that brief screenshot for. That really helped reduce overhead, and then along it spoke to the one company for both the back-end tool, ETL tool, and then also the front-end Prism, which is that the HTML5 end user interface that we use. And then lastly, again, I can't speak enough to the impression we got with Halo from the demo. They really brought their A game, and we were a little bit skeptical at first. Well, of course you're going to bring in the best consultant to give the demo, and you're going to bring the best sales team. Well, it turns out we go live, we use that consultant for our implementation, and post go live, we're still interfacing, working with the consultant, and the entire company itself is they're very interested in at least our success, and I'm sure you can speak to some of the other customers and you'll hear a similar story. It's actually been a very good vendor relationship, and that's part of why I was excited to get up here and share that, because working in IT and working with many different vendors, I would say we've had a wide range of experiences, but I definitely would put Halo quite at the top.
I'll second that.
Yeah.
Their support has been awesome the entire time.
It's quite remarkable, and yeah, awesome. So implementation, the main thing here was we tried to do as much work ahead of time prior to starting the implementation with the consultant, so we could leverage that consulting time and really get the ball rolling and hit the ground running. So prior to starting implementation, we scoped out all of our data fields, we mapped all the information we needed, and we really had a good idea of what we wanted to see as the end result. And by doing all of that due diligence up front, by the time the consultant got here, really it was just business analyst and 1 Halo consultant, and within a couple of weeks we had our first minimum viable product solution with all of our cubes built, and we were reaching the cadence of building out and releasing 1 cube a day. So it really went streamlined, and part of that is doing the due diligence. That's really helped us, but the other part is the Halo Source tool was very simple to use, especially for me being a I came on the side, I was a little bit of, I consider myself a power user. I understood relationships and relational databases, but this is a little bit more on the dimensional modeling side and a little bit more heavy in the SQL side, but I was able to pick up on it pretty quick, and the tool helped out quite a bit and learned quite a bit from the consultant. So wasn't a problem there, and again, the agile releases, since doing the implementation, I've been able to take over the ownership of all the cubes and modify and edit them as we need.
And that's an important piece. We often reference their account as kind of the poster child for an implementation that's just done right from both sides. They knew what they needed, they know where the data existed that allowed our tool to be able to pull it. But where implementations get bogged down is in process type questions. How do you define standard cost, right? It's like, well, we don't even do standard cost today. And you gotta have a separate powwow about that to get everyone aligned on what they wanna see, how they wanna see it. Leatherman really had a good idea of that out of the box. And what they were able to do is by getting these cubes up and rolling so quickly, they were able to get it in the hands of the users that started to make changes to that. But they were trained and equipped to be able to make those changes in-house and not have to call the Halo team back outside.
Yeah. Good. So we're pretty much using Halo everywhere in the company. And this is kind of a snapshot of some of the areas that we've added on to, but we organize our views and kind of loosely by each department, but we're going to go through some examples and I'll show you kind of areas we really use the product, but it's everywhere in the company. And for the most part, I would consider from an end user not in IT viewing IT systems, our company's really transitioned to have BI be at the forefront, and that's the most visible of all of our IT systems, and that's the one people talk about and reference the most. And it's really taken over and transformed how people view our IT department, and it's been pretty exciting. What's happened is we had thought that by implementing BI, we would reduce the initial request for ad hoc reporting, and while that was true, what we didn't anticipate was everyone now has this amazing information. They want more. So you knock out one thing, and let's get all that. So now we are able to add in a lot more functionality and a lot more visibility to the company, and it drives a lot better decision making. And so we'll get in. Let me get in. I think that's So that's the use cases that I'm alluding to. I would say, let's see, I think this is kind of our rough deployment diagram, so you can kind of get an idea of, we have our different systems that we need to connect to. This is when we initially went live. It's since grown and expanded, but for simplicity, let's just keep it here. So we had our old ERP system, we had brand new AX somewhere in here, and then we had Excel budget data that was living outside in Excel at the time, and we had our e-commerce demandware database and all that e-commerce data as well. And so we pull all the sources in, put it into a staging database and data warehouse, did all the transformation and ETL there, and then push to the cube, and then cube loaded into, or connects to the front end tool, or you can iframe it into Dynamics or wherever internal intranet website you want.
So this also gives a customer the ability to join those legacy systems and then shut them down. Because once you go live with your new transactional system, you no longer need to keep those alive. I mean, the main reason you're doing it before is for reporting anyway. What was neat about your group in particular, Jordan, was most times when people go live on AX, they go, I'm not buying any third parties, it's got DI, right? Or we're good, we need first uncover and see if that's a good fit. Leatherman did due diligence before they even went live. They selected AX, and about the same time frame, They selected a BI tool. Went live in about 4 weeks in several different segments and areas at Leatherman. So they started realizing the investment, the benefits of the investment in BI right away. And then when they went live with AX, we just changed the plumbing. Rather than pointing to QAD in progress, we piped it over to AX. We joined the 2 data sets. So the day one that a AX user launched into AX, they didn't just have open orders and active AR. They had all the history behind each one of those items as well.
So we went live with AX in March 2015. About a month ago, we finally got buy-in from all the functional leaders. We shut down MFG Pro, our old QAD ERP system, and all the functionality they need for the historical records is embedded into BI. So that's what they're using, and that's pulling from the data in our data warehouse. So yes, no more legacy ERP system. Speaking of which, this was BI prior to Halo. This is an example of one of 6 PDF reports that were emailed to different leadership in the company every day, and that was how you got your reporting. This is from a ERP system that was implemented in 1994, and it's very basic, high-level information. If you wanted more details or you wanted to explain why is this number up or down, you would go and ask your favorite power user to do a data extract, and they would put the data in Excel and build you a pivot table, and off you'd go with your data a couple days later, and you're all good, and you don't know what you're missing really until you get something like this, which initial look, where's all the pretty charts and where's the exciting visuals and graphics? Well, you got to think BI at Leatherman was actually used to start to drive decisions, and at many different levels. So yes, I'll get through some visuals and stuff, but I really like to start with this view because this is what is controlling all of our production outside of our forecast and MPS and MRP plans. Any sort of variance or change to our plan shows up in this view. And that way, every day when the production leaders come and they log in, they can see how they need to adjust their production for that day. So you go and it's probably can't even read that, but you can start in the top right and it will compare your inventory versus your orders. And so do we have enough inventory to fulfill all the orders that came in? No, why not? And you can keep looking and you can say, well, we don't have inventory because our forecast was completely off. And so we need to readjust and we need to ramp up our production, and here's how we're going to do it, and let's get started. So this has really transformed and allowed us to get orders out on time and really hit a lot of and limit a lot of the impact that certain shortages had. So that's been a pretty good use case for our SIOP team.
And how often were you doing SIOP meetings prior to Halo?
I think it was formally about once a month.
And what's
And now it's the team looks at this view every morning, and then they talk about it once a week, and then also once a month on top of that. So there's a lot more conversation now about what are we going to do to meet our orders and where are our shortages and how we're going to resolve that. And it's a lot has to do with now you have the information available to you, whereas before you had to wait for a very high level or non-customized report, or in most cases it was just word of mouth. So that eliminates a lot of that, and instead of having the sales guy calling at you well, we're going to get into some details, but before, again, a lot of decisions were someone calls you and pressures you, hey, my customer needs 1,000 charge multi-tools, you should really make it for this customer. Now we can kind of push back and say, is that really the best goal for our business? And that actually goes into this view here. This was a pretty cool example because now we can put structured reporting into BI. And so in addition to having financial statements, like your balance sheet and income statement, now we can put a customer profitability. So when you do get that call that says, hey, we want to make 1,000 tools for this customer, after you go and you look at your shortage board and say, oh man, we're not going to be able to do that, we don't have inventory. Now you can look at profitability. So you pull up that customer and you can say, wow, this customer is charging us a bunch of vendor compliance, and wow, our margins on this customer are really low. Why should we even be prioritizing this customer just because the salesperson wants it? No, we should really think about what's best from a margin perspective. So this has been a considerable eye-opener, not only from where are our customers really taking money away from us, which really wasn't visible prior to BI, because things like these vendor compliance, those don't happen, those kind of happen below the bottom line. But now that brings it right up to the front, and we can say, what do we need to do about it?
Question for you, Jordan.
What's up?
What drove the request to create this? Where'd that come from? This kind of reporting.
Finance team was reviewing their financial statements, and numbers didn't add up, and so they started drilling in and looking and saying, what's wrong here? And oh my gosh, we have this huge issue with customers, basically they have their own profit center of charging fines. So for example, Amazon will put in an order and they expect us to ship that order within 2 days. And they don't put in, 1 or 2 multi-tools. They want 50,000 multi-tools. And it's not profitable for us to keep 50,000 of their one-off multi-tool they want just in stock for those kind of shipments. So of course we're going to miss that 2-day shipment deadline, big fee. And that stuff was not communicated and was not being used to drive our decisions on who we should ship or what customers we should prioritize as a company. And as a result, it was impacting margins. So finance really said, okay, our margins aren't where we want them to be. What do we need to do to get them there? Well, let's start with getting the right information together and communicating that out to the company.
That's beautiful, Jordan. And then the follow-up to that is, so that the visibility that came down to finance, how did sales take this news?
So BI in general, actually, for a lot of, it's exposed a lot of opportunities for improvement in the company. And certain areas have reacted differently than others, and sales we're working on it. It's a transition to change the mentality now, but for the most part I would like to say it starts at the executive level. You get the executive on board and that kind of pushes down. Leatherman went through a major transformation actually last year, a couple years ago, where they said, you know what, it's not healthy for our business to sell to these customers, and they got buy-in from the sales team to say, okay, we're just going to cut them off. So Amazon was a major customer. They were one of our top 10 customers, and we basically just said no more Amazon. And that was a huge shift for sales team because that was giving up a large portion of our revenue, but in the long run it's going to help to protect our brand and help our margins. But it's been a work in progress. It
So
wasn't.
you see that as when I was my interest was piqued in this session, not only because Brandon was here, but because your title, right? How does Halo help?
Yeah.
Helping make most profitable year ever.
Yeah.
Is this part of that?
This is one part. The other part is this SIOP board is now allowing us to see where we need to where are we missing our forecast plan, and where do we really, because if we don't get these tools out to our customer in time, they're going to just cancel the order and we missed out. And so it helps us on the production floor, and it helps us in finance, and we're just, each of these views are going to be areas where we got new information that we didn't have before to help really guide how we should be doing our decisions. So yes, this was a big contributor, so was production. This is another one, again, going into more detail with inventory. We have a sister product, Leathermans, or sister company that we bought, Leathermans, and they make flashlights. And the challenge with them is, unlike a multi-tool where we produce in our factory, Leathermans, we order our lights from China, where they're produced in China. And there's usually a 3-month lead time from order to receiving because it comes on a boat. And so there was a disconnect. We had learned, because we got inventory values in BI, and we started looking at inventories and comparing it to what we should have minimum values and maximum values, we saw Leathermans had 10 times more units than what they should have, or an astronomical number. I don't know the exact number, but it was insane. Why do they have this much inventory, and why haven't we talked about it? Well, it turns out there's a disconnect between what we're selling and what we're ordering. And part of it was that 3-month lead time, and a large part of it was just not selling the product. Why are we ordering it in the first place? And all those conversations started because now we can see the inventory values. This led to a complete redo in how we do our forecasting for Leathermans.
So the shelf life of a battery and a
Okay.
flashlight.
Yeah, so the challenge with so multi-tool, we can build up inventory on that. Don't have to worry too much. It might corrode over 5-10 years. For the most part, it's not going to change. This is good. A flashlight, on the other hand, we have two versions. The regular alkaline battery version, usually about 1.5 years, but the actual light technology itself will go bad in about a year. It'll be obsolete from a technology perspective. Our rechargeable lights, though, those only have about a 6-month shelf life before the battery's not good anymore. And so we had a lot of inventory that was not being sold that no one would buy because the batteries are bad or because the technology is obsolete, and we had to write that off. And that's a big loss, and we don't want to keep doing that. Again, another situation that was kept in finance, we didn't fully understand, but now we can communicate this to the purchasing team and to the sales team, and let's get our sales a little bit better, or let's get our ordering to be more representative of what we're selling. We do a lot of our forecasting in MPS in BI, so this is kind of an example of our sales forecast. It starts at very high level and works its way down. So we start at customer, and we'll also do a product level forecast. And we're a very seasonal business, and we'll spike up here, but we don't want our production and our ordering to represent that, because that's very costly. So then we do an MPS, and we do that in BI as well, and that will help level load our production and ordering plans. And I think that might be, so those are pretty straightforward. This view was also a significant eye-opener. This is the only view I have with our actual information, and this is what our users are using BI for, and how often they're using it, and who's using it.
So this view is great for admins, because you run off, you spend all this money on a BI project, and you wonder if anyone's using the darn thing.
Yeah.
Or how many times have you built a report and wonder if the person that asked it actually uses the darn thing. So this along the left, just to give you a precursor, is every user in Leatherman along the left-hand side. Middle is all the solutions or cubes that they have in production, and then all the views. So you can see what users are using what cubes and what views during what times during the day, days during the week as well. So it's great to find power users. Great, these people are really adopting it. These people aren't using it. Why? Right? You can start to probe and ask those questions.
Yes. So first thing I like to show is we got everything from executives, CFO, to directors, to power users, to floor leaders, to technicians. Everyone pretty much in the company is coming in and regularly using different views in the system. And what we had learned actually was, initially before we had this information, we thought the sales team would be the most heavy users of BI. So we implemented Sales Cube first, we worked with them first, and it turns out, actually no, they were not using BI very much at all. They were just still used to their old way of calling up their favorite power user and asking them to make an Excel report and getting that in email. And so that drove a conversation of what do we need to do to improve the sales team and really make this easier for them to use. So because of this information, we could say, okay, we go back to sales team, now they have BI. We've got it, okay. I want to make sure I'm conscious of our time. The last example was we didn't realize how significant the production team was actually. They were using BI every day to guide their production, that SIOP tracker. We had built that tracker. We thought it was just going to be a once-a-month thing like it had been in the past, but it turns out they were using it every day. So let's focus our efforts on production team, make sure we hit all of their needs. Okay, last view. All of this information wraps up into a very nice dashboard. This is, again, puts out the visibility and the accountability. It's basically a scorecard at the C level of how are we doing on our production, how are we doing on our delivery, and how are we doing on our sales. Are we meeting our goals from a KPI perspective, and how does that translate to the overall health of our company? So what we do with this is we put it all throughout the company, and now you have conversations going on that's, hey, what's wrong? What's up with our production? What's up with our delivery? What do we need to do to drive success in the company? So again, getting this information, communicating it out, it's been really successful. Okay, so we had our most profitable year, and just to really recap, it really came down to getting the information, communicating it, and then driving decisions based off of that information. Everyone's on the same page, and we are all, from getting orders out to producing the right orders to prioritizing the right customers, we are all operating together for the best of the business. And then, yeah, smarter real-time decisions. A lot of the situations that would take a day or two to get a report, now we can make a decision right there in the meeting using the BI tool.
So increased sales margins, less inventory, gives an accurate forecast, and negotiating better with your suppliers. You can quantify the ROI through those 4 different areas.